Senator Cooper,
Here.
Senator French,
Here.
Senator Kolb,
Here.
excuse me, Senator Cost,
Here.
Chairman Nethercott.
Here. All right, well, good morning, members of Senate Judiciary Committee and those with us this morning watching online. Some notes and changes to the agenda for the morning. You would have seen that Senate File 140, Human Trafficking Minors, was listed first on our agenda this morning, and in consultation with the sponsor of the bill, Senator Salazar, he would like more time to work on this topic and potentially bring it back next year. And so we will not be reviewing that bill this morning. So for those of you anxious to hear about the outcome of that bill, I encourage you to speak with the sponsor and talk about his plans for next year. But as far as the Senate Judiciary Committee, we will not be reviewing it this morning. So with that, we will go to Senate File 128, Temporary Delegation of Parental Authority. Senator Kinski, are you here? Seeing that you are not here, seeing that this is the third calendar day that this has been scheduled.
Is he the one that just poked his head in and said he'd be right back?
Okay, he'll be right back. Is there any other information that any of the committee members would like to share with me about Senate File 128 or Senator Kinski? You can say online, is he planning on presenting the bill this morning? Is he working on another bill?
He's planning on presenting both bills.
Okay, so with that, we'll move to Senate File 137, Firearms Preemption Amendments and Applicability. Senator Kinski. Seeing that you're not here this morning, we'll move on to the next bill. Senate File 94, Prohibiting Coerced Vaccinations. Senator Bouchard. No one is here this morning. Senator French, you're a co-sponsor on this bill. Why don't you walk us through this bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Prohibiting coerced vaccinations is Senate File 94, an act relating to public health and safety, prohibiting governmental entities or public employees from forcing, requiring, or coercing immunizations or vaccinations for COVID-19 or influenza, and providing for an effective date. Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Section 1, Wyoming Statute 35-4-140 is created to read: no required vaccinations for COVID-19 or influenza. Line 13, no government entity or public employee shall force, require, or coerce a person to receive an immunization or vaccination on page 2, or vaccination for coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19. First detected in Wuhan, Hubei Province, People's Republic of China, or influenza against the person's will. Nor shall the state health officer include them in any required immunizations under Wyoming Statute 21-4-309. Section 2, line 7, Wyoming Statute 35-4-113B and 35-4-115A, by creating new paragraphs, Romanet 3 and 4 are amended to read: line 13, except as otherwise prohibited by the state during a public health emergency, the state health officer may subject a person to vaccination or medical treatment without consent in the following circumstances. Down there on line 22, under definitions, Romanet 3, government entity means as defined in Wyoming Statute 139-103, A and I. Page 3, page 2, or line 2, excuse me. Public employee means any employee of, person in providing services as an independent contractor of a government entity. And line 6, section 3, this act is effective immediately upon completion of all acts necessary for a bill to become law. So that's it. I think the gist of this bill is you don't want anybody.
Senator French, I understand that you read us the bill, but what is the gist of the bill? What does it do?
Well, Madam Chair, I think it is saying that no government agency or employee can force you to take a vaccine or force a vaccination upon you. I
All
think
right.
it's just as simple as that.
All right, thank you, Senator French. Are there questions for Senator French? Senator Kolb, Senator French, do you maybe want to come down to the front? Might be a little easier. Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator French, just a general question. It was my understanding that in the United States, you can't be forced to take a vaccine. So the coerced part of this, where you're basically forced, to do this, it seems like we already have protections for this. And I just wondered what you'd, well, I guess what is your opinion on the need for this bill if you already presently can't be forced to take a vaccine? I'll just give you an example. No one's going to come up to you at gunpoint and make you take a shot. I don't believe that's the way the law is currently written. Could you expound on that and maybe explain why we need this? Thank you.
Well, I think there could be instances, Madam Chair.
Senator French?
Senator Kolb. I think there could be instances where maybe you've been in an accident, an automobile accident, right? And you're taken to the local hospital and they require anybody coming into that hospital to be vaccinated. Now, are they going to, against your will, vaccinate you? Maybe you're temporarily incapacitated, unable to make that decision. I think there's a feeling out there that there's a fear out there from different people that I've heard from that for you to enter any place or this or that, just kind of like the mask mandate. Well, you can't come into this store unless you have a mask on. You can't do this unless you're vaccinated. I think that's where they're coming from. So hopefully that helps out.
Senator, follow up, Senator Kolb?
Yes, sure. Senator French, I think I can agree that people don't, obviously, I don't like mask mandates and I never have. And, I took personal responsibility. However, I think they can't refuse service to somebody who comes in a hospital, especially the emergency room. If you're in, they have to provide services. And I don't believe I've ever heard of anyone requiring that. And obviously, if that was reality, then we'd have probably another conversation. But I think sometimes rules are drafted or proposed bills happen for one particular purpose, and they get so broad and so wide they do other things. And I don't disagree with your premise that people shouldn't be forced or somehow coerced into doing something. But I think we have, from what I understand, there's already mechanisms in place that cover folks in the instances that you described. But thank you for your comment.
Madam Chair.
Senator French?
Senator Kolb. This would prevent it in the future from it ever happening. If you don't have any example of it now, it doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. This prevents it from happening.
Senator Kolb?
Okay, I understand that point of view. I do. But there are mechanisms currently in place, laws that, as I understand, that prevents it from happening. So I think it would take another change in the law, and maybe then that would be applicable to talk about it. But presently, the word coerced, doesn't seem to be a need to address right now, because they can't be coerced. I mean, they cannot be coerced. They cannot force you, as I understand it, to take a vaccine, against your will in that manner. I guess, could you explain that is the situation? Because I want to do the right thing also. Thank you.
Senator French?
Madam Chair, Senator Kolb, I remember it's been a while ago, but we couldn't go to school unless we had to have these vaccinations. I think that's where a lot of it's coming. I had to have the one where everybody ended up with a little round scar from wasn't tetanus, smallpox, or whatever it was. Those types of things, we really didn't have a choice back then. So I think that fear of, can that happen again? Can they mandate that? Can they force that upon you? You can't, your children can't be educated unless they have this shot or that shot. So,
Senator French, that's currently the law now. In order to attend public school, you must be immunized, but your children don't have to attend public school. It's all a choice. Senator Cost?
A little more on that, unless they have religious preferences, and then they're exempt from such. And they do acknowledge that in schools. But the other thing is, this really is directed at COVID-19 or influenza, which would be the flu virus. Currently, you're not required to take the flu virus as it is. So I'm struggling to see that as a necessary. And then if there's something in the future, this doesn't take care of the future, it takes care of COVID-19. This seems to me to be targeted at one specific thing, possibly two with the influenza. And I'm just worried that we're focused about one thing, that really we're making some kind of a statute for one particular circumstance that at this point, I would say they're not going to force us to take that. You still have the right not to take those shots.
Senator French?
Madam Chair, Senator Cost, I think this is a recognition of a fear out there, a fear of this vaccination. There's a certain part of the society that is fearful of this vaccination, and they just flat don't want any public health person or anybody mandating it. So correct me if I'm wrong on that, but there's that fear out there and I've heard from quite a few of them, that this thing's unsafe, it's unnecessary, and they just want it in law that nobody's going to somehow force them to take this shot.
All right, any final questions for Senator French?
I have a question, ma'am.
Senator Cooper?
Madam Chair, thank you. French. Section 2, the purpose of it is just to create the definitions, is that correct?
Senator French?
To my understanding, yes.
Any final questions for the senator? All right, seeing none. Any public comment on this bill? Senator French, you can come back up and join us if you want. Public comment on this bill? Any in the waiting room? If you're in the waiting room and would like to provide public comment, if you could raise your hand. Okay. And if you would go ahead and start your video, Mr. Fuchs, if you would, please.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I'm afraid I don't have a webcam, I just have a headset, but I'm a policy analyst with the Wyoming Department of Health. We just wanted to be available for questions, but also point out a possible second order effect. I know the intent of the bill is really looking at broad society. But it's also important to note that most nursing homes in the states and most hospitals in the state are or would be considered governmental entities. And so this bill would kind of tie their hands with respect to requiring employees to be immunized against flu in particular. That's one of the main concerns, I guess, we have with the bill. I think a lot of nursing homes and hospitals do that. They require their employees to be vaccinated to protect the residents of those facilities. And because those facilities are governmental entities, I think this would likely apply to them. So with that, happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Fuchs? Senator Cooper?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, could you tell me employees of the hospital, but what about patients of the hospital or clients of the nursing homes? Can they currently be required to have the vaccination? Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Senator Cooper, no, I do not believe so. It's really about the employees being part of that governmental entity. And so they're required as part of their employment contracts. And I can't speak to each facility. I think if Mr. Boley from the Hospital Association were here, or Carolyn Passano lobbies for those healthcare providers, they could probably provide more detail as to those policies within each entity. It really is up to that facility. It's not a statewide mandate, but it's just something to be mindful of.
So Mr. Fuchs, any other doors you want to open?
No, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fuchs. All right,
Follow up, ma'am.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, sir, your answer is you don't know?
Madam Chairman, Senator Cooper, we don't know the policies of each specific facility, if they currently require vaccinations of their employees. I'm 99% sure that it would be illegal to require vaccinations of residents or patients.
Any final questions for Mr. Fuchs? All right, seeing none. Any further public comment on this bill? If you're in the waiting room, please raise your hand. There's no one else here live. So I don't think that there's anyone else that would. Public comment is closed. Committee, back to you. Moved by Senator French. Seconded by Senator Cooper. Discussion amendments on the bill. Question being called on the Senator Cooper.
I have one concern. I'm not at all satisfied with the gentleman online's answer. I'd like to know what the statutes actually say as far as what's out there today. And maybe Madam Chair can answer that for me as far as whether that can be required in a private facility or not. Thank you, ma'am.
Senator Cooper, it's my understanding that Mr. Fuchs is correct that no patient and no United States citizen can be forced to take a vaccination of any kind, whether it's COVID or otherwise. It would not be in statute, private hospitals or even public hospitals' personnel policies associated with the requirements with working in those facilities, as is common and customary taking it out of COVID-19. It's tuberculosis. To be tested for tuberculosis is important. Common tests for hepatitis, work in prisons. So there's many occupations that require certain testing and certain type of vaccinations as a result of the exposure to those highly contagious diseases. I think that's been commonplace for a very, very long time, associated primarily in healthcare. But Mr. Fuchs indicated he has no idea which hospitals require that of their employees and which don't. I'm sure there's some that do and some that don't. So, but no patients are required to be vaccinated. So further comments, discussion on the bill? Roll call on the bill.
Senator Cooper,
No.
Senator French,
Aye.
Senator Kolb,
No.
Senator Cost,
No.
Chairman Nethercott.
No.
Madam Chairman, Senate File 94 fails by 4 noes and 1 aye.
All right, seeing Senator Kinsky is here at a time convenient for him. Senator Kinsky. Is now a good time, Senator Kinsky, or should we maybe later?
Madam Chair, my apologies. It was I had an 8-word bill in Health and Labor that took a little bit longer than 8 words.
Senator Kinsky, I will remind you that this is the third time this bill has been on our agenda.
Which one?
Exactly. Senator Kinsky, please walk us through Senate File 128, temporary delegation of parental authority.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So temporary delegation of parental authority. I belong to a Wyoming State Bar section where it was my pleasure to come to know a fellow from Utah. And he contacted me because with this proposition, he said in Utah, when he and his wife take charge of their grandchildren, they have just a simple temporary power of attorney so that they can take care of the children if they need medical care or go to a parent teachers conference, what have you. And he said when they take care of the Wyoming grandchildren, that's not possible. It's not recognized by statute, just that temporary power of attorney. And I thought, well, that just can't be. You know, you think that would be the case. And it turns out we, in fact, don't authorize such a thing in Wyoming. I went up and talked to the district court judge, and he said, no, if you want to have your grandkids for a couple of weeks and you want to be able to do whatever, you need a temporary guardianship. And so he looked at this and thought that this would be a good add to the statute. I know from Senator Cost, he says he does use a temporary power of attorney with his grandkids, but it's nowhere recognized in statute. And so this simply borrows from the Utah statute, a temporary delegation of parental authority, and authorizes something called a temporary power of attorney for parental authority. And in fact, Utah has a simple fill in the blanks form on their webpage. I meant to bring a copy. I did not. That is on the Utah court website. People just download it, fill it out, get it notarized, and away they go. Having grandchildren of my own now, I thought that would be a convenient thing to have as I hope to be able to have them at times for an extended period of time, long enough to be concerned about such things. So
Senator
that's-
Kinsky, when you have your grandchildren, what is it that you're afraid of you can't do when they're in your care?
Just medical care. Medical care is the primary thing. In the case of my friend, I think he's got them for a prolonged period of times. I don't know if their parents travel or what, but so you've got school and you've just got various sorts of day-to-day responsibilities for the children.
Now, that would be different than a grandparent just having their children for a short period of time.
Yeah.
And they break their arm and you need to take them to the emergency room. Are you concerned that the emergency room wouldn't be able to repair the child's arm?
No, I'm not. I think it's cleaning up the statute. And my concern is if we have the children for a prolonged period of time, a couple months, if the parents are overseas or something else comes up, that you've got to go to parent teacher conferences and what have you.
And why couldn't the parent just leave a note with the school that that's the situation as opposed to a power of attorney?
Madam Chair, I don't know. I've not been through the situation. I just have the experience of this attorney from Utah that says it's very easy and convenient in Utah with this statute and that he's not able to do it in Wyoming.
All right. Any final questions for Senator Kinsky? Senator Kolb.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Senator Kinsky. This is a general question. Oh, Madam Chair. Good morning, Senator. If there was a disagreement in the family where between the parents and one parent was, say, amenable to their parents, grandparents in this case, and there was a conflict with the other side where they didn't agree, there was a disagreement between the two parents because they weren't in fact, living in the same residence. So let's say they're adversarial to each other as a divorced set of parents. What provisions are in this proposed bill that would talk to that or give notice or remedy to that other parents who parent, which would be disagreeing with the choice that was made by the temporary power of attorney that's proposed here? And I probably didn't say that correctly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Kinsey?
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Kolb, that's a good point. I don't know that there's anything in here that addresses that. I would assume that it would be limited, the ability to do this would be limited to the custodial parent. And then, yeah, I've seen a lot of divorces where people can be extraordinarily mean to each other, and it goes through the children, a tug of war over the children. It may be this needs to be amended to limit it just to the custodial parent, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kinsey. Senator Kinsey, what about notice? I mean, who does the other parent get notice, or the other family members? I mean, who knows who has this power of attorney authority over the children? And what if the one parent doesn't consent to even the custodial parent's decision of who's going to act on their child's behalf?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I concede, I don't know what the answer to that one is. And you would think that if that were an issue, that it would be addressed in the Utah statute, but it might be that this requires a bit more study to address that question. I'll concede that's a pretty big one. Fortunately, I don't have any of that kind of situation in my family, and frankly, I hadn't contemplated all the various cascading effects.
Maybe Utah's family structures look slightly different than ours.
I think they have divorce in Utah, and I think they have their share of messy divorces.
Perhaps. Senator Cost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you and I talked earlier, for about 6 months, I had my niece, and we just had an attorney draw up the agreement. Her parents signed it and we signed it, and the school recognized it and the hospital recognized it. We had no problems. So I don't know whether it would be necessary in the cases of which have been mentioned. I know it would be a problem, because if the two parents were in disagreement with each other, I see that as a real issue.
Yeah.
But I know in this case, we had no issues with anything we had to deal with.
Senator Kinsey.
I
don't know if there was a question here, but
I think it's great that it works out, and I think it's right along with your notation, Madam Chair, that sometimes just a simple note to the school is sufficient in Wyoming, and maybe we don't need something like this in Wyoming. I am getting more and more concerned about the divorce situation, though, and I think maybe we ought to just set this aside, and I'll look at it and maybe bring it back next session. The divorce thing bothers me. I don't know why it's not even addressed in the Utah statute. And so there might be something I'm missing in there, Madam Chair. It might be best just to set this aside, and I'll study it and bring it back next session.
is that what you're asking to do, or would you?
Yeah, I'd just table it.
Are you sure? There's some people who would like to provide public comment. Do you want to wait and make that decision until after you hear from them?
Well, then it's your call. If I don't want to move forward with it, I don't know what there'd be for them to testify to. I think the the messy divorce situation is something I really got to look into. I don't want to move it forward without really understanding that better.
Well, let's hold on to that thought. And there's a Mr. Chris Smith in the waiting room. If you would start your camera and share with us your thoughts on the bill, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith? All right, is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak? There. Hello, welcome, Mr. Smith. Great to see you this morning.
Madam Chairwoman, you as well, and members of the committee. I can provide some background on this. In the military, I've probably personally done hundreds, if not over 1,000, what we call in loco parentis, which basically means in place of the parent powers of attorney.
Mr.
For our
Smith,
military members,
would
we
you
actually
introduce yourself to the
require,
committee?
excuse me, ma'am?
Would you introduce yourself to the
Oh.
committee?
My apologies. I'm Chris Smith. I'm the senior counsel for the Wyoming Military Department. I apologize, Madam Chair. In the military, we require many of our people, our members, to have these kinds of powers of attorney, single parents, dual military parents, and custodial parents. The reason being that in the military, we often have to deploy on literally a moment's notice, 24 hours notice. And our folks who are parents of minor children must be able to not worry about what's happening with their kids at the last moment. This is actually a Department of Defense instruction. All of the branches in the military do these kinds of powers of attorney. I was in favor of the Senate file because the sponsor is absolutely correct. Currently in the statutes of Wyoming, there is no provision for these temporary guardianship. It's really a common law. It's been in English and American common law for hundreds of years, doing powers of attorneys like this. The sponsor's story about it, his Utah acquaintance confuses me because like I said, we've done powers of attorneys like this all the time. We have schools, hospitals, doctors, deal with them all the time. It's not bad to put it in statute. Our problem with the current bill is simply the duration of the power of attorney. We typically do them for 2 years. In my experience and my knowledge as an attorney, powers of attorney generally don't have an expiration date unless you put one in there. We usually do 2 years because they get old, situations change. Your neighbor who may take your one minor child may have twins and they're no longer want another child in their household on a temporary basis. So we would ask if this were to be considered by the committee, that they consider moving the expiration date or the limitation to 24 months, since that's what we use. In terms of the question about messy divorces, we deal with this constantly. This does not change the custodial agreement entered by the court. The non-custodial parent, however, particularly in our military families, may be on the other coast, could be overseas, and we still need someone to take care of a child because the custodial parent is about to get on an airplane and deploy overseas. So we still do these. They don't trump the custodial agreement entered by the court. If the custodial parent arrives and wants to take the child, the non-custodial parent, but the actual parent of record wants to take the child, that trumps the power of attorney holder. And that happens fairly often where we have someone get on a plane as a late fill to a deployment and has their neighbor has a power of attorney to take care of the child. And then the non-custodial parent shows up and takes custody of the child. So it really does work. The purpose of the power of attorney really has to do with non-emergency medical care, school registration, parent-teacher conferences, that kind of thing. If the child breaks their arm and ends up in the ER, they're going to be treated clearly. If they go to the dentist and they need a cavity filled, it's non-emergent, and unless you're the parent who can consent to the procedure, it doesn't happen, which is why we do these things. Really, our number one focus is to make sure our parents of minor children who are military members, who, particularly when they deploy overseas, don't have to think about, is their child being taken care of? They have somebody that they've picked, that they've notified, who has their child and can take care of them. The last thing I wanted to mention is when I talk about these deployments, your National Guard back in 2006 and 2007 on the Army side deployed, and their orders were for 500 and something days. They were actually gone for well over a year. And that is why the durational element of the current bill is of a concern. But with that, Madam Chair, I stand for the committee's questions.
All right, any questions for Mr. Smith? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Smith. We appreciate your testimony and that perspective.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Is there any additional public comment in the waiting room on this bill? If so, I need you to raise your hand now. Mr. Taggart, are you raising your hand? Mr. Taggart, welcome. You need to introduce yourself to the committee. Go ahead and start your video and share with us your comments on the bill.
Okay, well, I had a lot of comments that mirror Mr. Smith's comments, and I'll skip those simply because he's already covered that base. I'm the friend of Senator Kinski that lives in Utah and suggested this bill. I suggested the bill. I guess it would help to introduce myself. I'm a native of Wyoming, born and raised in Powell. Went to school with Senator French's brother Jerry. I sit on a council, a Wyoming Bar Council with Senator Kinski. That's where we met, and so that's my interest in Wyoming. I have family living up in Cody and the like, and see this bill as would be a benefit to them in taking care of children. The only thing I want to add two things I want to add that Senator Kinski and Mr. Smith have not mentioned. And one is, as a grandparent, I've dealt with my grandchildren many, many times here in Utah, and I realize Utah is a different state than Wyoming in many, many regards. But we were taking care of our grandchildren for an extended period of time, and schooling was a bit of an issue now and again. Being able to go pick up the kids at school and the like. There was always concern about who we were, what we were doing, and that kind of thing. Or often, I should say, often concern. And we didn't need a power of attorney ultimately to get the kids from school, but they wanted some indication of our authority, and this power of attorney would have this temporary delegation would have alleviated some of the problems we had there. So as a practical matter, I think it would come in handy for parents. The only other thing I want to mention that Mr. Smith did not mention, and that is 28 states in the United States have this temporary delegation on their books, including all of Wyoming's neighbors, with the exception of South Dakota. And South Dakota provides that military deployment power of attorney to the members of its military. So all your neighbors provide some form of this power of attorney. And I would say, I didn't actually count this up, but I would say at least 50%, if not 75% of them are very much like the Utah power of attorney. A few of the states get a little more paternalistic, and their statutes start to look like an IRS regulation. But nevertheless, if you can wade through it, you can still set up a temporary delegation of power of attorney in those states. As to the time frame, again, referring to these 28 states, looking at a chart which I'll supply to the committee, about half of them, the period is for 1 year. The other half is typically 6 months. There's a couple that have no time limit. Arkansas and Tennessee have no time limit. The power of attorney would have provision in there, so you could enter the dates as to how long you wanted this particular power to exist. I just see this as an easy call, but I'm biased, and I appreciate the committee's time, and I'll take questions if there are any.
Well, thank you, Mr. Taggart. It's wonderful to see you. I know Senator Kinski's thrilled to know that you're here and assisting on this bill. We appreciate your feedback. Any questions for Mr. Taggart? All right, seeing none. Mr. Taggart, thank you. Question again for Senator Kinski. Senator Kinski, a few years back, you co-sponsored a bill for parental rights that became law. How do you think that bill interferes with this particular bill or interplays with it? Senator Kinski.
Madam Chair, I'm embarrassed to say this. What was the bill? I've sponsored a lot of legislation. I'm trying to recall anything I did that passed.
It was the bill that Representative Jennings carried the flag for. He was the primary sponsor. And it really solidified the rights of parents in the state of Wyoming, ensuring that, the liberty of a parent is of utmost and a fundamental right. And so I am just curious to know in the conversations that we have had concerning a divorced, which is really, I think, what this bill addresses, particularly for the military spouses, right? When one spouse is deployed and they're the custodial parent and who they're going to delegate parental authority to. and how that may statutorily or constitutionally interfere with the rights of the other parent. I understand that this is commonplace in many locations, but there are legal concerns as a result of the passage of this previous bill. I think it's some of those constitutional constructs. Senator Kinski.
Well, I'd have to go back into the files to get it all out. But what I recall is the bill was a reaction to legislation in Oregon, which allowed a court to award visitation to somebody over a parent's objection, is what I think it was. I can't recall for sure. But the short answer to your question is I haven't looked at that statute vis-a-vis this, but I would stand by my original statement, which I think is best to withdraw or to set this aside. And what I'll do, in addition to taking a look at some of these other states that, and I was delighted to see Mr. Taggart. I thank goodness Senator Cost said, "Oh, by the way, you're up in Judiciary," because I had missed that, or it would have been, you would have really been steamed at me, Madam Chair. But especially, and then I want to work with Chris Smith of the Wyoming Military Department to see that those concerns are properly addressed.
Senator
I don't
Kinski, you've been up the last 3 days in Judiciary Committee.
Well, my apologies, Madam Chair. I thought that had been arranged during budget week, that none of our bills were going to be brought up. And so there's a miscommunication there. And so I apologize. In any event, I'll work with Mr. Smith. I don't want to have something that's as long as the IRS code, as Mr. Taggart said, but clearly there's some concerns that need to be addressed with respect to custodial, non-custodial, and feuding parents. Mr. Smith seemed to indicate that it's fairly easy in the eyes of the military. If the non-custodial parent wants the child, when the custodial parent ships out, that trumps the guardianship. And so there might be just a way with a couple of sentences, but I'd prefer to just take this and work on it in the interim. And then your question about the parental rights bill we did with Representative Jennings, I'll have to take a look at that as well.
Thanks, Senator Kinski. Any additional public comment on this bill, hearing that the sponsor would like to lay it back? All right, seeing none, Senator Kinski, thank you. We'll go ahead and lay the bill back. We won't
Thank
take
you, Madam
action on
Chair.
it. With that, we'll turn to your next and our final
It could
bill.
be a good interim topic for the Judiciary Committee.
No family law, Senator Kinski, no family law. As you recall, we did that a number of times. All right, Senate File 137 is up next, and I know that we have a number of interested parties here that would like to testify on this bill, so we'll go ahead and get started on this. Senate File 137, Firearms Preemption Amendments and Applicability. Senator Kinski, the floor is yours.
Madam Chair, I've got a news article I'd like to pass out to the committee members if I could.
If you'd be sure to give one to our secretary, Ms. Eben.
So, Madam Chair, this is a bill that is very simple in concept, and it's simply this. We have on the books a statute which says that state firearms regulations trump any local entity firearms regulations. It's a very simple statute. It's 68401, and you see it set forth on pages 1 and 2 of the bill. What happened then is, subsequently to this preemption statute of 68401 being on the books, subsequently there was a Wyoming Firearms Freedom Bill that was enacted. And that is one that purports to say any firearm that's manufactured within Wyoming is exempt from any federal regulation and so forth. Then somebody carried a firearm onto the campus of the University of Wyoming and was cited for it, and it went to so then there was a hearing in court on that charge and ultimately ended up in the Supreme Court. But what the judge pointed out is that when this Made in Wyoming statute was enacted, and I'm trying to look this up as I go, the Made in Wyoming statute was 68402. But when it was enacted, it said this act, meaning the Made in Wyoming firearms, it said this act means 68401 through 406, looping in the preemption statute. So the judge said, well, the only local regulation that's preempted is as to any firearm that's manufactured in Wyoming. So if you're carrying a Weatherby, there's no local preemption, but if you're carrying a Smith & Wesson, there is local preemption. And that was the determination that came out of that. So this bill, the operative provision of it is on page 3, which simply says for 403A7, this act, meaning the Made in Wyoming firearms freedom, is 68402 through 406. So that 401, which is the local regulation preemption, is not looped into the firearms Made in Wyoming bill. So ordinarily it would have stopped there. But if we go back to page 2, I did ask LSO to add in one other item, which is in the existing local regulation preemption, which is 68401C, regulation by cities, towns, counties, political subdivisions, other entities is preempted. And we are adding institution of higher education, which would be the community colleges and the university. So that goes one step beyond what the existing statute provides. So you may ask, what is the difference between this and, for instance, Senate File 67, repeal gun-free zones and preemption amendments? The difference is this bill is very minimalist in that it does not seek to add to any places where guns are prohibited or subtract from any places other than the university, subtract from any places where guns are prohibited. It simply says cities, towns, counties, political subdivisions, you have to respect whatever the state law is. You can't add to it. You can't subtract from it. So it's very simple in that regard.
Thank you, Senator Kinski. I'm sure we will hear how simple it is from all of the people who would like to testify. Questions for the senator? All right, Senator Kinski, I'll give you a chance to come back around at the end after you have
Alrighty.
your testimony.
Thank
Senator
you.
Cooper, questions for Senator Kinski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, so on SF6, the other
Repeal
legislation-
gun-free zones, Senate File 67 is the other bill that may interplay with this bill.
I'm sorry, yes, ma'am. So can you speak to the fact that that is permitted concealed carry only? And does this preempt that on, where's the conflict going to be?
Senator Kinski, I think Senate File 67, which is entitled Repeal Gun-Free Zones and Preemption Amendments. Senate File 67 addresses two pieces. One, repealing gun-free zones as applied to specific areas for concealed carry permit holders. And the bill does a second thing, which is preemption amendments as well on that bill. Senator Cooper is asking you, how does that second portion of Senate File 67 affect this bill when both of them address preemption?
Madam Chair, mine is a subset of that other bill. In other words, if in that other bill, it is adding to the list of gun-free zones, and mine does not. So if you were to take the first 3 pages of the other bill, of which I'm a sponsor, and if you were just to throw away the first 3 pages, you would end up with my bill, with the exception that I'm adding in community colleges and the university. So mine is a subset of the others. So the idea is mine is just kind of backup or insurance if anything happens to 67. Mine is a more minimalist. It's just an approach to say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I fully expect that if this committee passes mine out, it'll just set on general file. Likely nothing will happen to it unless something happens to 67 and it doesn't move. Mine's just a bit of a backup, and I think mine is, it's just intended for those that have reservations about repealing of gun-free zones, but do think that we shouldn't have a patchwork of regulation all the way across the state. Mine is designed to address the idea that if you drive from Cody to Sheridan and you pass through multiple counties and cities, you shouldn't have multiple regulations on what you can or cannot do with the pistol in your truck or on your hip.
Senator Kinski, I see that all of the sponsors of this bill are from Sheridan.
It's a Sheridan thing, madam. It's this simple. I was just running out of time. I just didn't have time to gather up a whole lot of sponsors. I've had people come up and tweak me a little bit because they weren't given a chance to be on the bill, but it's just purely back up to the larger bill that I'm on with Senator Driscoll. And I quite simply didn't have time to gather up a lot of sponsors.
Curious, do you know what are Sheridan College's concerns? Have they spoken to you about the bill?
Sheridan College, I believe, has concerns about the bill.
Do they support the bill?
I don't know for sure, but I'd be surprised if they did.
Can you say guns with emphasis?
Firearms.
If it's fun, it's a Friday fun morning with firearms. It's the theme for Judiciary this year. This will be our 4th gun bill this session. So we appreciate you adding to the
The
staff.
mantle of responsibility weighs heavily upon your shoulders.
Shall not infringe is evidently more complicated than we ever imagined. Thank you, Senator Kinski. We'll turn now to public comment. We're going to start with members on Zoom, primarily as a result of my battery on my laptop. It's telling me I'm running low on juice. So we're going to start there, and we're going to start with Ms. Visser. Ms. Visser, welcome. If you would start, if you're thinking about testifying on this bill and you're in the waiting room, I need you to raise your hand right now and keep it raised. I know there's a couple others of you in the room that I would imagine would like to testify. All right. Ms. Visser, welcome back to the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's good to see you again this morning. Go ahead and introduce yourself and share with us your thoughts on the bill.
All right. Thank you, Chairwoman Nethercott and senators of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Michelle Visser, and I live in Laramie. And I will try to keep my comments brief, but I just wanted to point out that as I was reading the Republican platform that was adopted in 2020, there were 2 statements that really jump out at me that I think support this idea of local control over government control. And that is the idea stated, the people, not the government, are the best stewards of our country. And when I think of the conversation I just heard about vaccines and people's choice, I think it's very important that we maintain the choice within the college campuses at the university and our community colleges to determine whether or not how guns would be regulated rather than the state government. I also want to just quickly point out that the Wyoming Tribune Eagle just recently ran a poll seeking input about people's opinions about concealed carry permit holders being able to bring guns into public places, including government meetings, sporting events, and college campuses. 74.7% of the respondents said they are opposed to having guns carried into those gun-free zones. So I just, as compared to 25.3% in support. So I feel like the people are saying that it's very important that we are allowed to choose how those are regulated in these local entities. Specifically regarding this bill, the University of Wyoming and the community college. So again, I just want to restate, I'm opposed to Senate File 137, and I appreciate your time listening to my testimony. Thank you.
Ms. Visser, thank you so much. Any questions for Ms. Visser? All right, appreciate your time, Ms. Visser. Thank you. All right, with that, we'll go to Dr. Joe Schaefer in the waiting room. Welcome, Dr. Schaefer. If you could start your video and introduce yourself to the committee. I think we saw you last week. Good to see you again this morning.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Joe Schaefer. I'm the president of Laramie County Community College, speaking on behalf of the trustees and our students. Madam Chair, these are similar conversations with slightly different twists, and I'm thinking of different angles to make a compelling argument to you. I will admit that I have trouble following the good senator from Sheridan's approach here and what this bill actually does. But as you start to pull the threads, it quickly becomes evident that this will simply allow for broader carry, and in fact up to open carry on institutions of higher education. And so let me take just a quick different approach here. One of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, for all his shortcomings, had one thing right, and that was his strong belief that the way you preserve democracy is by educating the people. And in his mind, and hopefully in many of ours, there's really no greater purpose of government and no greater interest of our states and our country than the education of our citizens. And I know you're doing the work of the people, and you have to carry out your work, and you set structure and parameters to be able to do that effectively, at times doing so in ways that would actually put limits on constitutional rights. I would also ask you to consider that our work, the work that we're doing for the people, which is educating our citizens so we can preserve democracy and have a vibrant economy, is also a critically important aspect of the state's work with that. What I can tell you is, whether it becomes more safe, less safe on campus, we can argue that in and out. You pass this bill and it will impact our ability to do the state's work of educating our citizens. Can I tell you exactly what that means or how it'll play out? No, but we have all the anecdotes and examples across other states and other communities. And so, Madam Chair, members of the community, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I would encourage your no vote on this bill. Allow us to keep doing the work of the people in educating our citizens and creating an environment that's conducive to fulfilling that obligation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. Questions? Senator Cooper. Then we'll go to Senator Cost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Schaefer, when you started out and introduced yourself, you said you're speaking on behalf of your trustees and students. Could you explain your authority to speak on behalf of your students just a little bit, please? Do you have, is that your opinion or is that their opinion?
Dr. Schaefer?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator Cooper, in both cases, we consult with our Student Government Association, which is the association for the student body of Laramie County Community College, as well as consulting with the Laramie County Community College Board of Trustees. You'll also hear from Ms. Taylor here. I believe she represents the entirety of the community college trustees through the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees. So I am here representing their interests with the belief that the trustees represent the constituencies that elected them, and our Student Government Association represents the student body.
Any follow-up, Senator Cooper? All right, Senator Cost?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question would be, would you be in favor of this bill if local control was adopted as well?
Madam Chair, Senator Cost. So I would say that the message that we've tried to deliver, and I believe many of you have delivered, is that government closest to the people can make the best decisions for the people. We have elected trustees elected by their constituents that represent the district, and believe that is the best place to put these types of decisions for the control of this environment. Senator Cost.
All right. Senator Cooper, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Schaefer, wouldn't we fall into that category as elected representatives?
Dr. Schaefer, is the state legislature as close to the people as the local political subdivisions?
Madam Chair, Senator Cooper, that is a fantastic conversation. Your representation is one of your constituents as well as one of the state. The local board of trustees is the representation of the college. So closer, further, that's something we could likely debate. Those that live and breathe inside the institution of higher learning, I would have to err on the side of our locally elected board of trustees.
How many elected are there to each board of trustees, Dr. Schaefer?
Yeah, Madam Chair, there's 7 elected board members for each community college district.
And isn't it true, Dr. Schaefer, that each one of those trustees represents approximately 20,000 voters?
Yes, Madam Chair. As I think you've pointed out, and other members of the legislature, the actual representation by our 49 elected Board of Trustees is significant and much larger than most Senate or House districts.
In fact, it's about half. They like to remind me of this often. Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. All right, any additional questions for the president of the college? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. We have Mr. Cole in the waiting room. Welcome, Mr. Cole, if you would start your video. All right, good morning, Mr. Cole. Good to see you. If you'd introduce yourself to the committee and share with us your thoughts on the bill.
Good morning, Chairwoman Nettercott. Good morning, members of the committee. I apologize. It takes about, so you guys know, it's about a 30-second lag when they switch you over from the webinar into the part where you can speak. So it's you have a little bit of a dead spot there, and it's a little bit disconcerting because you lose contact with the world. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this morning. My name is Nephi Cole. That's Nephi-Cole. I'm the Director of Government Relations and State Affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, who are the Firearms Trade Association of America. We represent about 9,000 members who are anyone who makes, moves, or sells a firearm or firearm component in the United States of America. Our membership includes everyone from Cabela's to Shields to mom and pop gun shops, from Winchester to Beretta and everybody in between. We represent companies like Magpul. We also represent optics manufacturers. We own a large show of people are familiar of called SHOT Show, that and a lot of people recognize us by that, versus the other stuff that we do. In government relations and state affairs this year for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, we've passed a number of permitless carry bills throughout the nation, including in Montana and in Utah. And the Montana bill is probably specifically important in this discussion because that Montana permitless carry bill also carried a preemption piece of that bill that applied to universities. The issue in Montana, and it may be a similar issue that the state of Wyoming faces, is that in Montana, while it was legal to possess weapons and carry weapons, even to open carry in most places in Montana, much like it is in Wyoming, there was a provision of state statute that allowed a university to make additional regulations that applied to firearms, basically creating, if you will, kind of an island at the university setting where they could create laws that were different, that didn't apply to everyone else in the rest of the state. The Montana legislature felt like that was problematic, and when they passed 102, and it's now been signed by the governor of the state of Montana, what that did was put the university on the same playing field as every place else in the state of Montana. So it allowed the university to still develop recommendations, and so the bills had some provisions that are not in this bill. For example, allowing the university in dormitories and other locations such as that to develop storage requirements for students that were living in close quarters with other students, that allowed for example, it gave the university basically the remainder of this year to also define areas in the school where it would be difficult because of living on campus, and then activities such as football games, activities such as going to a gym class, where they would have additional storage and carry stipulations, on the university. And so I just wanted to flag that for you. I think this bill, it is quite a much, I don't know if you would call it a surgical approach, but it's a much broader approach to trying to tackle that issue. We did think it was appropriate in Montana to allow for discussion, and safe storage is extremely important in firearms. We are big fans of individuals, given their different living situations, having the opportunity to select the best storage options that work for them. That said, we do think it's problematic. We think preemption is important. It's problematic if you have a situation where a local entity can ban the carry of firearms because we think it's most appropriately handled at the state level. With that, I would say that there are a number of states around Wyoming that do allow carry on campus. In fact, there's no prohibitions of it. They cannot be prohibited at all, and those include states that might surprise you, like Oregon and like Colorado. They also include Idaho and Utah. They include the state of Kansas, Texas. It's a big list. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's somewhere around 15 that have no prohibitions. It's somewhere around another 15 states that will allow for an institutional decisions related to that carry on campus, but they also allow carry on campus. And then you're going to have the remainder of states that don't allow carry at all, and those states include states like California, Wyoming, Florida, Louisiana, New York, Massachusetts. And so we do think it's appropriate that this issue be addressed. I can't say whether this is the best way to do it. I know that 67 is also making its way through. We think that that's a good bill, and in general, we stand in favor of allowing the state to make these decisions and not leaving it to the individual institution. And the primary reason for that is that those individual institutions, as noted, local control is great. But what can be challenging is if you have an institution where academia tends to be less comfortable with firearms, and that's just a fact. And so it allows those individuals to make decisions that apply to someone's to someone's constitutional rights who's a member, who's a Wyoming citizen, who's going to school there. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and we look forward to following this debate as it moves forward.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Questions for Mr. Cole? Great. Seeing none, Mr. Cole, we appreciate hearing from you and your thoughts on the topic. All right, is there anyone else in the online waiting room that would like to testify on the bill? If so, I need you to raise your hand now. Mr. Armitage, give him a minute to join us. Mr. Armitage, welcome. Welcome, Mr. Armitage.
Thank you.
If you'd introduce yourself to the committee and then share with us your thoughts on the bill.
Thank you very much. My name is Terry Armitage. I currently work with the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. I just want to speak in support of this bill. And the rationale from law enforcement is we need uniformity across the state concerning firearms rules and regulations. Law enforcement doesn't want to have to guess if they go to a college that there's a different set of rules and that they need to react differently or enforce the rules and laws separately. Makes much more sense that we have statewide preemption in place to where the state establishes all of the rules and regulations concerning law enforcement issues of firearms, response, etc., rather than ending up with a patchwork of different conflicting sort of rules like we have nationwide. With that, I would stand for questions.
Mr. Armitage, thank you for that. Can you identify for me which law would be violated for someone open carrying on the Laramie County Community College campus? Mr. Armitage?
Madam Chair, I guess I can't say for sure. We know that a fellow was cited at the University of Wyoming for doing that very thing. I can't speak to the Laramie County Community College specifically.
Well, it would be a state law, and that would be the only basis for law enforcement to take action, right? Not policy, correct?
Well, I would, Madam Chair, I would like to think so. I haven't delved into the issue at the university as to why a person was cited there, and that issue went through the court system, but apparently law enforcement felt there was a violation that they could cite at that time. So I don't know if that's unique, inconsistent, or just how that played out.
Yeah, I'd have law enforcement study that case and study those laws. I'm not aware of anyone being prosecuted for carrying an open firearm on any college campus. Are you?
Madam Chair, yeah, I can't speak to that at this time.
How long have you been practicing in Wyoming?
Madam Chair, 35 years, during which time I spent half that time working at the Attorney General's office. I've represented law enforcement, city, county, and state over the course of my career. I've litigated on behalf of law enforcement agencies and individual peace officers throughout my career.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Armitage. Putting you on the spot there. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Further public comment in the room, if you could please come forward. Welcome, Ms. Taylor. Oh, I don't know where those rings come from. The mysterious phone in all the meetings. Welcome, Ms. Taylor.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Erin Taylor. I'm happy to be here with you again today to talk about this bill and recognizing that there is another bill moving through the body right now. I represent the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees, and I thought I would just give you a few points of reference today with regard to some of the questions that have come up and to follow up with the testimony that you did hear from Dr. Schaefer. To be clear, to address the question earlier of how Sheridan College might feel about this bill, all 7 community colleges have a position against this bill. And for the reasons that I expressed to you earlier, in this, or was it last week? I'm sorry, the days are running together. They want to have the ability to make those decisions locally. And so I'm not going to repeat all of that. Right now, you can carry on campus with permission and just recognizing that there's a process, letting the school safety and security group or the president let them know that you've got a weapon, and a lot of the students are hunters, and so we certainly do have that situation on the campuses. But there are situations on the community college campuses that maybe aren't ideal to have a weapon involved, whether it's a disciplinary hearing, labs, the dorm situation, so et cetera. The one thing that I would state is, yes, Mr. Cole is correct. There are a certain number of states, 20 some, I believe, that do have different levels of what he described, and that is true. But here in Wyoming, we don't always do what everyone else says is appropriate. We do what's right for us. Right now, the colleges do have a position of opposition. They just want to maintain that local control, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Questions for Ms. Taylor or Senator Cole?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Hello again, Ms. Taylor. I just had a general question. Is that, are you prepared to provide security for these students? I mean, if we're going to we can't seem to mediate something in the middle here. It's either all or nothing. We want to keep it the way it is or we want to change it. I'd like to find something in the middle. I think it's just, seems odd to me that smart people, we can't talk about reality. Reality is that I feel if you're going to strip away a person's right to defend themselves, you in fact then have an obligation to protect them. And I think that's the quandary here. I don't, personally, do I think open carry on campus is the right thing? No. But I wonder what your opinion is on what we can do to move forward on a conversation that just doesn't say no and someone else says yes. And I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Ms. Taylor, I'm going to follow up on that line of questioning. Are students at any of the colleges or University of Wyoming, to your knowledge, prohibited from having firearms?
Madam Chairman, not to my knowledge.
And in fact, they have policies that ask for, if you're going to bring a firearm on campus, you just need to touch base with campus security. Is that right?
Madam Chairman, that's correct.
And in fact, the case that was cited and that Senator Kinski has brought forward, Mr. Allred was actually cited for trespassing, correct?
Madam Chairman, I believe you're correct, but I'm not here to talk about the UW case, if that's fair.
Sure enough. Any additional questions for Ms. Taylor? All right, seeing none, thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you.
Further public comment on this bill? County Commissioners, how do you feel about local control? We have three of them in the room. I figured I'd just call it out. Wonderful to see you this morning and welcome to Senate Judiciary Committee. I see Senator Bouchard is here as well. We know he is a big advocate of gun rights. Senator Bouchard, thoughts on the bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I came in late, but I will say there's just a couple things that I heard that probably should be challenged. We had students that had contacted every one of the community colleges to request permission, and they've been denied consistently. For them to say that there's no prohibition, there is one. It finally came down to one, I got to tell you, I'll just tell you the honest truth of what I would do. Every time that I saw a campus that had a problem, I would actually send it to UW police chief. And I would say, I hope you can sleep at night. And we kind of eventually got a good conversation going back and forth. And he no longer is here, but he left the state. But he told me, he said he didn't want to be in the position that he didn't care about the students that actually would actually come in and ask for permission. He didn't care that if let me use the right word that he said. He said that he wasn't concerned with those that actually used the process and came in and asked for permission properly. He said that he just didn't like being in the position where upper management told him the policy was no, and then in the books, he's the guy that had to give the up or down permission. But so there was so much politics in the whole process. And that's what's going on here when it's a right. The right to defend oneself is a right. It's not something that should be in a bureaucracy. So I think it's very wrong for people to testify here that isn't being done, that there aren't prohibitions, when in fact we've even seen court cases. Seen that whole thing used against a right. So I think this is a very simplistic way to solve the problem.
Senator Bouchard, I attended the University of Wyoming and I'm a founding member of the ATF club at the law school, which is alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. That was not my experience. So I understand that you maybe set some students up to ask, is that correct? The University of Wyoming who was denied?
To be very specific, Chairman, it was my daughter, who was also an attendee, who was also a graduate of UW. And I mean, we didn't just make this up. My daughter had made the requests. And what we did further, though, is made further requests statewide. We finally had one that said, they said, well, we know who you are, and we're not going to answer it, was their comment. But the bottom line is it's all been political. It's all been, hey, no, we're not going to let you have a right, even though if you had a permit, even if you have the ability to carry everywhere else in the state, now you can't carry on campus. That's the bottom line. That's where it is.
Senator Bouchard, do you think if this bill were to pass, or Senate File 67 were to pass, that the university or the community colleges could have policies associated with gun regulations on their campus? Could they tell students they can have guns in their dorm rooms or in classrooms? Do they have that ability if this bill passes?
I think this is specific to carry, and that's what the immediate solution is. But I mean, why would you not let an adult have a firearm if it's something that's legal to do in their own dormitory or in the possession of themselves? I mean, why would we be talking like that?
Just a question for you, Senator Bouchard, what your thoughts on the legal effects of the bill are. I know the stakeholders have those questions. Curious to know if you think that interferes with their ability to do that. If they should provide safe storage devices, if there should be a requirement for safe storage, any of those pieces.
Madam Chairman, I mean, it seems like you're asking me if this bill would limit them from having more ability to have gun control, is what the question is.
Thank you, Senator Bouchard. I appreciate your comments. Any questions for Senator Bouchard? All right, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Senator Bouchard, I got my first official gun grabber email, which I'm pretty appalled about because not about that. Got a lot of guns. Expect I got more guns than everybody in this room. So I don't like that much. And I don't know why I get these. We haven't made a decision. Now, when it comes to, I guess, the issue about, securing weapons on campus, in a dorm room, I really don't have an issue with that. I think it's probably a legitimate way of dealing with this, meeting people halfway. And then the concealed carry issue of it, I'm more inclined to like that part of this. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you this bill's perfect, but I think it's something that needs to be spoken about. And if the Board of County Commissioners, as I used to be a county commissioner, wishes to take on the responsibility of delegating the ability to people have weapons or not have weapons, I'm happy to have a conversation about that, because somehow I don't think you really want to. There's a tough situation. We're all trying to protect people and have people have civil liberties and be able to exercise those civil liberties. And I respect that. So I once again, I think this bill isn't perfect, but it is important to talk about, and we need to come to a better position. Besides, I don't agree, and you have just totally 180-degree disagreements on the subject. But we have to move forward with this and protect people. Thank you.
Was that is there a question in there?
There was somewhere.
All right, thank you, Senator Cole. You can tell it's Friday and the Senate Judiciary Committee has been working hard for the last couple of weeks, navigating all of these issues and balancing all of the stakeholder interests. Is there additional public comment on this bill? This is the last opportunity. Public comment is closed. Committee, back to you. Moved by Senator French.
Second,
Seconded by Senator Cooper. Any discussion on the bill?
Madam Chair.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think a couple things have been brought up here that are pretty critical. Mr. Armitage talked about uniformity across the state. I think that's extremely important all the way across the state. Secondly, I think, we're all in a position where we're ready to take a fierce stand against federal intervention in our Second Amendment rights. If we're gonna say that, if we don't want federal intervention, then we also have to say we don't want private and local intervention. I think the state is the right place for this right now. The statute is here that says the state has that authority, and I understand public safety on the campuses, but I think in the interest of these individuals' Second Amendment rights, I have to stand by this bill. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Senator Cooper. Any additional comments from the committee? All right, seeing none. Roll call on the bill.
Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator French,
Aye.
Senator Kolb,
Aye.
Senator Cost,
No.
Chairman Nethercott.
Aye.
Madam Chairman, Senate File 137 passes with 4 ayes, 1 no.
All right, thank you. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Senate Judiciary. Thank you, members of the public. Appreciate hearing from you.